Războiul informațional provoacă victime și efectele unui astfel de conflict se răspândesc pe toată planeta. În Ucraina, jurnaliștii deveniți brusc corespondenți de război sunt și în prima linie a bătăliei dintre informațiile corecte și cele false oferite de propagandă. Olga Konsevich este jurnalist în Ucraina și, deși a fost nevoită să părăsească Kievul, continuă munca pe frontul informațional. Sunt Cristina Cileacu. Începe Pașaport diplomatic. Olga Konsevich, editor-in-chief 24 TV UA, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Felul în care sunt transmise informații din războaie s-a schimbat de-a lungul timpului. Dacă în conflictele din secolul 20 jurnaliștii erau considerați profesioniști neutri și puteau trece de ambele părți ale liniei de front ca să discute cu toate părțile implicate, în ciocnirile militare din secolul 21, jurnaliștii sunt văzuți ca entitate afiliată unuia sau altuia dintre combatanți. Acest nou statut, nedorit de altfel, a transformat ziariștii în ținte sigure. Iar riscurile nu implică doar viața corespondenților de război, ci și calitatea informațiilor, care poate fi oricând alterată. Războiul informațional este o componentă care atârnă greu în câștigarea unui conflict real.
Olga, you are a journalist and in your country all the journalists basically become war correspondents, and this is the hardest part of our work as journalists. What do you see every day?
Yeah, no, it's like we're joking in our editorial board that we are like also informational warriors, and we're also like holding this informational front line for all the audience in Europe and also all around the world. It's also like the hardest part, I guess, it's for some reporters on the field, because they see these crimes, war crimes every day. They also have this connection with people in some occupied regions. For example, now there is a tough situation in the eastern part, for example, in Mariupol, also all around the Kiev region, in small villages, as well as on the southern part of Ukraine, in Kherson and near Odessa. So when our reporters on the field communicate with these people in these cities, it's the hardest part to hear this suffering, to hear this information about crimes, about children deaths and so on. So yeah, now we are not sometimes like in the same situation as these people, but even hearing this, it's also very difficult.
Journalists are killed in this war and they seem to be directly targeted. Your situation is better than the one you described till now, but are you afraid?
Every person is afraid, because it's like it's a human nature when you are really understand that you are in a war situation. We also heard this news. We were shocked by this news. For example, when it was, I guess it was 13th of March, when American citizen Time correspondent was shot by Russians. On 15th of March, very harmful news about Ukrainian fixer and Fox News correspondent, Irish citizen, who also was near Kiev filming the situation. Even if we are not war correspondents, but now we're trying to adapt to this situation, and we're thinking about some special equipment for our journalists, about some special rules for correspondents who are on the field and so on. So I get that if Russia will understand that this is a war crime, these situations with journalists will end.
Cum se spală pe creier un popor? Cu ajutorul propagandei. Internetul și media sunt instrumentele perfecte pentru convins populația că ceea ce vede în realitate nu este de fapt adevărat. Cu ajutorul minciunii repetate, albul devine negru, victima devine agresor și lumea își inversează valorile, pentru simplul motiv că oamenii aleg să creadă conspirații și să ignore faptele. Formatori de opinie și jurnaliști acceptă rolul ingrat de slujitori ai minciunii. Ei sunt primii care înțeleg cum se denaturează adevărul. Și totuși, pentru suma corectă, aleg să transforme cuvintele în arme, care provoacă pagube mai mari decât cele datorate bombelor. Dezinformări precum criza de combustibil sau de ulei de floarea soarelui, pe care și România le-a experimentat, fac parte din această categorie de propagandă.
As an Ukrainian journalist, you have for sure sources in Russia, and I want to ask you, from your knowledge, how do the people in Russia, I'm talking about the ordinary citizens, get their information? We know that internet is mostly restricted in Russia. We know the propaganda that the official channels have. From your knowledge, how do the people in Russia get their information?
You know, I need to mention that, for example, from 2015, we've got this, we blocked some Russian social networks like Vkontakte and Odnoklassniki. Also, we've got like special regulations for Russian broadcasting. So, by the way, we never, like, during this, last 5 or 6 years of war, not from the beginning or in 2014, but like after a few years after the war began, we didn't have this strong connection like it used to be, like when we had this friendship with Russia. The situation is even worse because, as I understand, when Russian people lost this opportunity to gain this information, at least from some oppositional channels, now they are like in some bubble. They are listening only to some Kremlin sources, and maybe it's even worse than have this oppositional channels. Maybe it was like a big shock also for us, because before we had at least this support from some qualitative journalists in Russia, but now I get that they are in the bubble, and as I can hear and as far as I can see, they find Russians found out about Ukraine mostly from Telegram, from Vkontakte and other social networks where it's very easy to spread disinformation, and also they are trying, and also they using these TV channels, pro-Kremlin channels, and that is why it's very hard like to provide any objective information for them.
But Olga, do you speak with your colleague in Russia, with your fellow journalist in Russia?
We doesn't have many colleagues in Russia because we lost this connection like after the annexation of Crimea and after the war in Donbass. So it's maybe a few people, but when we talk to them, we try to explain them that no one needs this blood and that we all need like a peace.
And do they know that in Ukraine Russia attacked you, and that Ukrainians are dying and also Russian soldiers are dying and the situation is very bad, or they are following their propaganda?
It depends on the media. When we talk about some colleagues from Dost or Meduza or some oppositional media, they do understand this situation. They have their relatives in Ukraine, they have friends in Ukraine, they visited Ukraine many times, so they like really know the situation. But if we talk about some colleagues from pro-Kremlin sources, you know, we didn't make any connection with them.
Atacurile pe care armata Federației Ruse le face asupra orașelor ucrainene au crescut în intensitate și, în funcție de acestea, crește și suferința localnicilor care au de îndurat agresiunea rușilor. Frica se instalează gradual și, la rândul ei, capătă forță pe măsură ce oamenii rămân fără curent electric, mijloace de comunicare și transport și alimente.
I don't want to be cynical, but we have to compare the situation of the population in Kiev or in western Ukraine with the situation of the people trapped by war in eastern Ukraine, especially in Kharkiv, in Mariupol and places near Mykolaiv and places like this. How do they survive?
Yeah, you're right. The situation in Kiev is slightly better if we can compare it like during war times, because we've got very good defenders. We've got like special forces. We've got civilians who organized special forces for defending the city. Every morning we are waking up with these sirens and hearing and seeing new pictures of shelling some houses and buildings with citizens in Kiev. The most difficult situation around the city, and maybe it's the biggest problem for Kiev citizens, that they sometimes can't leave the city because of this destruction of roads, of bridges and so on. But comparing, with Kharkiv, Mariupol and other places on the east and south, it's much like it's more safe to live in Kiev. But you know, like comparing even some numbers, for example, before the war, more than 3 million people lived in Kiev, and now it's maybe 1.5 million. So many people like flee to Western Ukraine in any city near the border with EU just to be safe, because people understand that maybe Putin don't want to hit some areas near the border with EU, but maybe your audience also saw this picture and knew this information that, for example, a few days ago, also Russians shot military base in Lviv region. It's only 20 kilometers from the border with Poland. So anyway, like everyone is in danger, and there is no safe place in Ukraine.
What about you, Olga? Did you thought about leaving your country and save yourself and your family and your dearest ones?
I sent my family and mother in Lithuania, because it was before the war. We just planned our family trip there, and I didn't know that she and my sisters didn't have this chance to get back to Kiev. It's also very hard for me to understand that I need to go somewhere, or my family needs to go somewhere, because I never lived abroad. I never thought that I need to build my life in some other place. And I need to clarify that I'm also now in Lithuania, in Vilnius. I lived Kiev, and now I communicate with my editorial board just through internet. Like, thanks God, we've got normal internet connection. We are staying in touch, and I know the situation. I'm trying to explain them how to be safe, how to provide reports during such difficult times, and like comparing to my colleagues in Kiev and in other regions, I'm okay, I'm safe. As I'm joking, I'm in NATO at least, so maybe Putin don't want to bomb these countries. So, but anyway, all my stuff in Kiev, we closed our editorial office only for a few days in the beginning of war, and now we reopen it. We also proposed some relocate for people who are afraid for their families. So some TV reporters, because we also have like TV station, they relocated to Lviv. But anyway, many people they are still in Kiev, and they keep to communicate with us, keep running these reports, broadcast, and so on.
Rămâne în istorie felul în care Volodymyr Zelensky, președintele Ucrainei, și autoritățile țării sale au ales să răspundă agresiunii militare inițiate de Federația Rusă. Poate contează carisma și experiența actorului, însă curajul nu poate fi mimat. Echipa de lideri ucraineni care luptă împotriva rușilor invadatori este motorul care alimentează atât armata de profesioniști și voluntari a țării, cât și admirația întregii lumi.
We see that your president and the government of Ukraine is still working every day. They are trying to keep the country working, functioning. But there is a recent report done by United Nations saying that 9 in 10 Ukrainian people are in danger of poverty. And I have to ask you, how is the rest of the population of Ukraine that is not working for state, for the government, dealing with everyday life? Because I can imagine most of the businesses are not working, are closed.
Here I could be very thankful to our small businesses and for big corporations. Everyone is united for this crisis and for this situation in Ukraine. I know that also government provided special programs for businesses who will support simple citizens, some operations, some just to open some shops, some pharmacies, just to provide these basic needs for people. They said that we needed just to stop the war. We could rebuild every house, every road, we could reopen our business, we will share our money, our opportunities with others. But we need to stop this war because every day affects the economical situation of Ukraine. All depends on the of the period of war, because if it will last, for example, for 1 year or 2 years, it could exhaust our economy and our country. But I hope that maybe some politicians will talk, will negotiate, and anyway we will find these resources to rebuild our country.
President Zelensky recently said that he observed that the negotiations with the Russians are becoming much more reasonable. How can we translate this for the Romanian public? What shall we understand? What is reasonable in these negotiations?
We also don't know the exact explanation of this term. We see reports, and we also asked the Office of President to clarify this term and to explain us how talks continue, how it could end, and so on. But as I understand from some sources in Ministry of Defense and so on, that now Russia is also exhausted, also finding some ways to collect even some people from Syria, some other occupiers from different regions. But if this collection is failed, they will try to find some other ways. They will talk, and maybe it will be some direct talk between Putin and Zelensky. And I guess that Zelensky also understands that maybe Putin now needs this direct dialogue because of Russia's lose. So I guess that maybe the next step is just to sit at one table and to stop this war. But I also need to clarify that maybe Ukrainians and Zelensky, they are thinking from the side of normal people, from some normal political attitude and understanding of the war. But if we talk about Russians, about Putin's behavior, he doesn't like any peaceful talks and negotiations. He believes that maybe only some strong power, strong fist will be effective for some negotiations. But I do hope that maybe he will change his mind and maybe the war will stop.
Olga Konsevich, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții. La revedere!